Maša Blaznik is coming back to speak with us again. Maša is a psychologist, independent researcher, and founder of the Empathy-Based Society Institute, an initiative dedicated to promoting the purposeful development of empathy at both individual and systemic levels for people, animals, and the planet. Today, Maša is speaking on empathy movement, cultivating an empathy-based society for personal and systemic change. Take it away.
Thank you, Kara. I will share my presentation. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. I am very happy to be part of this community and to explore and create with all of you how we can build an empathy movement. Today, I will share with you my thinking and my ideas because I have been thinking quite a lot about it also when I founded my own organization with the global vision, as Kara already told you. And I will try to address this through the next 5 questions. And these questions are, why do we want to build this movement? What do we want to address with this movement? How do we envision doing this? What do we plan to do? And at the end, what are the core values on which this movement will be founded? So I will just start. So the first question, why do we want to build this movement? And I argue, like people before me already mentioned, that we live in a world where is basically empathy crisis. And why I say this? I say this because we live in society that has normalized violence towards people, towards animals, towards nature, and towards the planet. And we built economic system on this logic. Additionally, we have placed ourselves, humans, at the center of this world. And we perceive all other beings and the natural world only through the lens of human benefit. How do others benefit my health, my comfort, my pleasure, or my profit? And in this context, empathy is not just a soft skill. Empathy is actually an evolutionary trait important for our survival and thriving. Plus, empathy in our brains switches off violence. And vice versa, violence can in our brains switch off empathy. And that's why it's so important. That's why I also founded this my organization, because I want to intentionally cultivate empathy and empathic practices so that we are targeting the normalization of violence in our society. And today we are firsthand experiencing what it means to live in a violent society, and we see the consequences. And the fact that this is not something normal and this is not something natural shows this data that in the past 5 years, there has been 4,000% increase in Google search for compassionate inquiry, which means people long for more empathy, more compassion, more this type of alternatives to their problems and issues. And so this brings us to the next question. What are we addressing? What do we want to address with this movement? And I invite you all to just think of your own ideas, your own suggestions. What do you think that we would address with this movement? I will share here things that I feel are important from my perspective. First is disconnection from self, isolation and disconnection from people, animals, nature, and the planet.
Maša, can I just interrupt? Your slides aren't moving forward. If you want to click on them.
Yes. Sorry.
In presentation format.
Yeah, you need to be in presentation format. I can't read the language. There you go.
This is better.
Yeah, you're going to need to. Yeah, there you go. There you go. That works.
So it will be, I will leave it like this, okay? So do you see now this is point 2? What are we addressing?
Yep, that's working.
Okay, great. So the third point that I feel it's important is consumerism and normalization of violence. And the fourth thing that I feel strongly about to be addressed is silence and compliance with the current systems globally, I mean. Because I think that this point is important because it brings us more clarity, direction. What do you want? Why do we want this movement? What do we want to achieve with it? So, but these are my suggestions, my views. The next point is how do we envision doing this? And the first thing, I see this movement as decentralized global movement with pursuing bottom up and top down changes, meaning like that we promote empathy to individuals, to communities, to provide them with tools, with practices, with support so that they can start using empathy, using empathic practices in their personal lives, with family, but also in their professional lives, in their community lives. And top-down changes, meaning in that context, I mean systemic changes through policy advocacy, governance, and so on. So the next thing, how I envision doing this, and Edwin already talked about it before, is network building. So connecting organizations, NGOs, nonprofits, businesses, individuals, influencers, everybody that shares the values of this movement. Because like Edwin said, that through this we create shared identity and this collective power. Because even when we look at other organizations who are like technically pursuing different topics, for example, organizations that are working for social justice, for animal protection, for environmental protection, yes, maybe topic-wise they are different, but at the core level, everybody is pursuing empathic connection and empathic practices. And if we make this connection clear, then we can realize that actually this empathy movement is so strong. There are so many people who are actually pursuing empathic practices. And I think this would be really beneficial when we start connecting in building network also from that perspective. And then the next point is education. I called it education art tech because I had no other idea. I was not very creative as change makers. Because in my experience, in my opinion, academia, education, AI, tech, media, these all fields are play vital roles in shaping our narrative, how we imagine the world, and how we share our discourse. And if we can communicate the value and the practice of empathy also through this field, I think it would be really, really powerful. And I recently, maybe last month, I listened to the interview with Godfather of AI, Dr. Jeffrey Hinton. He mentioned that he sees the need that AI has more inbuilt maternal instincts. Because AI should have more inbuilt care for humanity, because this is not the issue. And we all know that the basis of parental care is empathy. So although he does not necessarily mention empathy, he mentions maternal care. He's basically talking also about inbuilding of empathy in AI. And the last point is empowering individuals as agents of change. I earlier mentioned already this aspect, because when individuals see that they, as family members, as professionals, as community members, when they start seeing the value and potential of empathy, and they can become active agents, in that way, it can much easily and spread as decentralized idea, value, and practice. And we come to the point, what do we plan to do with this? And again, I separated it on individual level, community level, systemic level, how I see them on individual community level. Empathy circles are for me really powerful, and I see them on both levels. Also, development of self-empathy, because in my opinion, without self-empathy, empathy for others cannot be as effective and as profound. And then maybe we can find some empathy ambassadors. We can also teach people how to connect empathically and how to use empathy towards animals and nature. On the community level, there could be resources libraries so that people who are interested in doing this can get all the tools and information. We can host empathy events. And I mean that on all in different contexts. And then there are human libraries. I don't know if this is English expression. This is when you go to library and you don't borrow a book, but you talk to a person. And then trainers, building networks and partnerships, and then systemic level changes, meaning top down. And then the core values that I mentioned earlier, I decided to add this slide because when I was discussing this topic with others, I realized, like Jody mentioned already on the beginning, that we can fall into a trap of assuming that we all agree what empathy is. But now we see that through media and that there is a lot of negative spin on empathy. There are also a lot of misconceptions about empathy. So I think this is one thing that really, when building this movement, it would be good to be clear on. And then align on values, some basic values that we want to share so that people get clear what we are pursuing. And as I mentioned before, when I talk about empathy, I always talk about self-empathy and empathy for others combined. I never just see empathy as empathy towards others, but I see it as synergy, necessary synergy for growth. So thank you very much. I'm complete.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. So 5 questions on how to build this movement. Why build the movement? What do we want to address? How do we envision this for the future? What do we plan to do? And what are our core values? I heard, as a conclusion to all of that, moving with empathy from benefits for me to benefits for we by empowering individual agency and networks of impact. That chef kiss delicious. Thank you so much.